I want to talk about the frequency of change or the vibration of change. And the vibration of change or the frequency of change is when something goes from one state to another. In other words, water has three known states it is liquid at room temperature, it is gaseous at above 100 degrees centigrade, and it is solid below zero centigrade. So those are the three states of water. But what happens with water when it changes state is that it changes it's the vibration of its molecular structure changes. And the proof of that is that when you go to touch water, water is wet. When you put your hand into steam, you know that steam is hot and moist, and ice is solid and cold. And the way that it achieves each one of these states is through a change in the molecular vibration of the chemical compound, which is dihydrogen oxide, which is water. Okay, H2O. So, hey Jennifer, how you doing? Kyle, how you doing? Michelle Brown, my sister, how y'all doing? Just talking about vibration and the vibration of change, and this is a real fundamental, I think, thing to understand is because we look at circumstances and situations and we say, why don't they change? Why is it that something that we're not pleased with stays the same? And I just realized too that I didn't start my sharing, but I'm going to keep on talking while I'm doing this. Why don't things change? And the reason why things don't change to a state that we desire them to is because we have not ascertained or discerned the vibration or the frequency of the thing in order to change it. So this is let me go 3 quart, and that's where I'm gonna share it to for now. When we look at situations and circumstances, like we look at what's going on in the world today, we look at race relations, and we look at economic disparity, and we look at discrimination against women, discrimination against LGBTQ, and why do these things persist? And the reason why these things persist is because the vibration of humanity hasn't changed. Now, understand this, that when things do happen, the civil rights movement, women's suffrage, marriage equality, when you look at all of these things, that when they happen because a vibration occurred in the fabric of humanity, in the matrix or the wave field of humanity, that caused excitation in the field that caused something to change state. And when the state changed, we get the desired outcome. In other words, what we've done is we have caused humanity to change its vibrational frequency, which invokes change. And the question is, how do you get to this? Because when water changes state to solid to liquid to gaseous, it doesn't change accidentally. It changes because someone has made a decision to change that, or there is something in nature that has made the decision to change it. In other words, like we have seasonal change. We go from spring to summer to fall to winter, and so in that solstice between fall and winter, we go from cooler temperatures to freezing temperatures in a lot of the parts of the world. And so nature dictates that because of this change in the solstice, that there is a change in the state of the climate. But in the case of humanity, is that we decide when things change. We decide when certain the fabric of rights, God-given rights that are codified by men, That happens when a vibrational change happens. When governments change, a vibrational change happens. All of these things are dictated by a human vibrational change. And it's not an individual change. That's the thing that we have to understand, is that this is a corporate effort. And this is really important because when we start looking at, again, all of the things that are going on in the world, why don't they change? And this is what I'm really excited about because I'm in this thing about quantum spirituality. And I went through this one discussion earlier today that was really, it was interesting because the discussion went on, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 hours longer than it should have. But I respect this guy and I respect him as a thinker. And so that was why I went on as long as I did. But the reality is that I'm into this quantum spirituality thing because the traditional spirituality doesn't work. It just doesn't. And the thing is that people will say, well, if you just pray about it. And now, careful, because somebody may say, well, what happens, Derrick, is when we all pray, we change the vibration. And yes, there is a certain amount of truth to that, because when we do things corporately, it does invoke a larger human vibrational change. But I really believe, and this is where I am, that the traditional way of praying, the traditional way of worship, the traditional way of approaching God, it's failed. But what's happening is that in society right now, in humanity, we are in the midst of what I call a great awakening. That people are realizing that religion is not the way to spiritual growth. That religion really can't, all religion can do is create spiritual stagnation at a specified level. In other words, it's like having a governor put on your car. I'm going to use a car analogy here for a minute. The Bugatti Chiron, which is, according to the record books, the fastest car in the world, the Bugatti Chiron can only achieve its top speed when a second key is turned in the door sill. When this second key is turned and engaged, it puts the car in a top speed mode. It locks it at a lower ride height. It begins to change the active aerodynamics on the outside of the car, and it prepares it. In other words, it changes the vibration of the car for a high-speed run. Now, there are some intentional steps that have to be taken in order to get to this point. And what's happening is that humanity now sees that traditional religious paradigms don't work, and they begin to harmonize at these higher frequencies that I like to call them, that begin to actually put something into the universe or put something into the field, the quantum field of love, that begins to excite the field and begins to produce particles in this wave that produce change. And that's really, that's what's happening. It isn't because we prayed harder or we prayed longer or because we fasted, all of that stuff. Listen, that's not what works. What happens is that when people are in agreement and in alignment with something that is going to be better for humanity, I believe that that is the game changer. That is the secret sauce. And this is what we're trying to get to. Listen, me personally, I'm a Jesus guy. That's me, right? But your mileage may vary. Jesus may not be your particular path. And I'm not here to evangelize or to say one way is better than the other. What I'm saying is that you can get 100 people in a room and they may not all be of the same religious persuasion or the same, or even in the same space on the faith spectrum. But they could get into agreement about a thing, and it's basically, let me take you back to something that's in your Bible, that the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel, it said that when they started producing this thing, building this thing, it says that God looked down and said, "Behold, they are all of one mind and one tongue. They can do anything." This is a spiritual principle, and it does not have any respect of any particular faith, because at that particular time all of humanity was not united on the same faith. Everybody pretty much was kind of on their own thing. But for the sake of this tower, everybody got on the same page. And so when they got on the same page, something began to happen. And likewise, when humanity gets on the same page about something, we begin to change it. It's funny that women's suffrage in the West had a trajectory that was similar across many nations. It took the same form, the same shape, the same trajectory in a multitude of nations. It wasn't something that happened in an American vacuum or an English vacuum. This was something that was pretty widespread. And again, right now, after the murder of George Floyd, we see people protesting, saying Black Lives Matter all over the globe. What's happening is there is a shift that's, and I hate to see, God Almighty, I can't tell you how many ways I hate that word, and I just caught myself. There is a change and excitation in the field of humanity as the result of this. And so now a legitimate discussion is taking place regarding the rights of disenfranchised and oppressed people all over the globe. It's grown beyond just simply a black thing or an American thing. This is a global movement because humanity is agreed to vibrate at this frequency of change. And so when I've said this before, and I'm going to repeat it for the sake of this discussion, is that I believe that theology is the only branch, the only major branch of study that has not advanced since the Dark Ages. I'm serious. If you take a physicist from 300 AD and drop him into 2020 and not giving him any tech, no tools, no equipment, just the books. Just the books. You give him the books, and this physicist is going to be absolutely gobsmacked. His mind is going to be blown. If you do the same thing with a physician, the same thing. If you do it with a chemist, the same thing. If you do it with an industrialist, the same thing. If you take them from 300 AD and bring them into 2020 and give them nothing but books, you are going to absolutely blow their minds. I mean, there's some of these people, they just couldn't even handle it. Okay? But if you took a theologian from 300 AD and dropped him today, and again, you're not giving them no iPads, no phones, no access to the internet, no tech, just the books, they're going to be pretty much right at home. And that's because when it comes to theology, folks, we have not collectively decided to vibrate at a higher frequency. See, the thing is, this is why I am so anti-religion, because religion is like that governor on your car. It sets the speed limit. That, just like the example I gave of the Bugatti a few minutes ago, that the Bugatti can only go 220 miles an hour if that key is not turned. But once you turn that key, it unleashes the full 1,200 horsepower payload of this car, and now it could do almost 200, actually I think it's over 280 miles an hour, almost 300 miles an hour. And religion is like what you get when you don't get the extra key. You're stuck at a certain level. You can only go so fast. You can only release so much power. That's it. You're stuck because religion wants to keep you bound. Because as long as you are bound, you are controllable. But what happens is that when you're free and you lose the constraints, you lose all of basically you lose all of the bondage. Now you're free. So what happens when you're free? Listen, let me say this, because there are some people that if they don't properly awaken to freedom, just like how if you wake up a sleepwalker the wrong way, they can be hurt, they can hurt themselves or they can hurt you. Likewise, we have to wake people up in the right way. We have to wake them up in love. And I have to admit, my admission here is that sometimes I'm not so good at that. Sometimes I like to take a stick and swat things. That's the way I'm wired, guys. I'm not saying that that's right, but what I am saying is that there are people that do it better. There's something that, I'm gonna pick on some folks again. Kyle Butler and Aaron Tomlinson, Aaron Abke. Like these guys, they're gently ushering in. Vanessa Brooks. My sister Sandy. They're gently ushering in things. Bishop Jamal Broadnax. They are gently ushering in this change. They're not poking the bear like I am. So I may not be the best example, and that's okay. I mean, I'm somebody's cup of tea. I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but the point that I'm getting at is this: that at some point, humanity has to awaken. Humanity has to arise. Humanity has to come to this realization that there is something holding them back. I'm going to tell you something. I hear this from people. They say, well, if it weren't for the church, you wouldn't have a lot of the science that you have. You know what? And there may be some truth to that, but I also believe that just as much science that was facilitated by the church, I believe that probably just as much has been stagnated by the church. So again, religion is not the answer. Theology is not the answer. What is the answer is that everybody awakening to the truth that they are one with source, that they are vibrating at the frequency of love, that they awaken to this truth and begin to actually manifest that vibration. Like, do you know that there are certain frequencies in a car? I'm going to use another car example. God help me. That Honda makes these four-cylinder engines. They're large displacement. They're, like over 2 liters of displacement, which is large for a four-cylinder. And so what they do to overcome the inherent imbalance of that is that they put a balance shaft in it. And the balance shaft counter rotates against the crankshaft that causes the engine to run smoothly. So in other words, this engine is already capable of vibrating at a certain frequency, but this balance shaft comes in to dampen frequencies that might cause the optimum frequency of the engine to harm itself. So again, we have to have people who are rotating to produce power, but we also have to have people that are rotating to provide the calm, to provide the peace, so that this vibration of humanity that brings about change doesn't cause us to self-destruct. Does that all make sense? I really hope so, because it really, this fascinates me, that there is so much in humanity that I believe that could change in a grand scale. Sea changes, as we call them, the global changes. Listen, religion and theology settle for incremental change. And their justification for this is, well, if we just pray more, if we just suffer longer, if we just endure, if we endure to the end, never mind that all that we need to change everything for the better is already at hand, that it's already within our grasp, that it's already in a position that we can take hold of this and change it. But again, I believe that we simply are not taught to understand vibrational theory. And again, this is one of these things, like people that do tarot. people that do Reiki, or people that that they practice other mystical arts. All of this is considered evil by Western theology. That is considered satanic. And again, this is like one of these things where theology hasn't moved, because when you look at things over time, these things have a benefit. Understanding chakras, understanding meridians, all of these things have the capacity to reshape humanity. And here's the beautiful thing, is that it starts internally. It starts with us. It starts with ourselves, and then it begins to radiate outward. Because it's like when we get our chakras aligned, when we get our meridians in line, then our aura begins to change, which is our external energy. And that external field of energy is perceptible by others. It is said that the human heart has an electromagnetic field that radiates 6 feet around the human body. Do you know that's how you feel a certain way when you're around your spouse or your children or people that you hold dear? When you're near them, your heartbeats begin to the field begins to intertwine and intermesh. And so what happens is you begin to feel, I don't know about you, but I travel a lot for a living. And when I come home, there is nothing like being among my wife and my sons. Even if I come home and my wife, not my wife is always, she always has her shit together, but my kids, they might be at each other's throats, but I come in and it's like just the feel of their heartbeat in the room with me makes me feel better. When I'm around certain people, I mean, there are even certain people that when I get on the phone with them, just being on the phone with them makes me feel better. And as a result, I walk away from these phone calls better than I was before I started. And this is where understanding these vibrations matter. Because when I know to change, like if there is something going on in my life that is causing me distress, if I understand vibration, then I can change the vibration of what it is that's causing me stress. It's just like if you're playing a guitar and you have a major chord shift. When you have a major chord shift, it changes the tone of the music. You begin to modulate at a higher or lower key, and it actually changes the mood of the song. You can go from something very upbeat to something that's very somber, and you can do it just like that. So the thing is just like how we change the frequency of a musical instrument, that we are like musical instruments that we could just pluck a different string. And it may not actually change the circumstance. It may not change the situation, but it does change your mentality toward it. And so suddenly you begin to feel better. You begin to be, supercharged, energized, enlightened. So what I'm saying is that we have to learn how to flow with the frequency of change. And understand this, that there are different situations, different circumstances, different people, different places that all have different energy. And that energy flows into you and you perceive it. It's like, have you ever been around someone and you say, man, I got a bad vibe about that person? Or you're with somebody and say, man, I got a good vibe about them. That vibe is something that can be trusted. And a lot of times I don't know about you, but this used to happen. I used to preach this when I was preaching. I said, like, that when you are a citizen of the kingdom of God, that you ought to bring something into the atmosphere that causes the atmosphere of the room to change. And have you ever been in a room when someone walks in, you say, man, something just happened? Is it cooler? Is it warmer? Is there a different fragrance in the room? It could be a number of different manifestations, but what happens is that someone comes in whose frequency is different than that of the room. Have you ever noticed that there are certain people that you know that whenever they show up, they're the life of the party? That immediately, a party could be dead on its last legs, but then when the right person shows up, you know, all of a sudden the party gets all the way live. I got a friend, I don't know if he's watching, but his name is Joe Grove. And Joe, Joe is one of those cats. It's like your party could be lame as hell. But if Joe shows up, it's going to suddenly be live. Because there are people that are like that. They bring an energy, they bring a vibration, they bring change. And this is where I'm going. That this frequency of change, we need to learn how to tap into this. Because tapping into this frequency of change is what's needed to change the state of humanity. You see, I believe personally that most of humanity is spiritually asleep. Now, this is not to put me above anyone else or anybody that believes like me above anyone else. All I'm saying is that I think that we're in the process of waking up. But there are some people that have been anesthetized by religion and theology. They've been anesthetized by situations and circumstances, and they cause them to sleep. But what happens is that once this vibration of love, this vibration of life, this vibration of godliness, that when we begin to truly embrace our divinity, that is when humanity wakes up. And for those of you who are into the rapture and all of that end time stuff, which I'm not an eschatology person, I think all eschatology is bullshit. But if you want to see Jesus, then you need to vibrate at the frequency of change. Because when you vibrate at the frequency of change, you vibrate at the frequency of the highest change. Okay? You're vibrating at the frequency of love. And I believe that just like when the Bible says that Jesus ascended into heaven, I don't think that Jesus ascended into heaven. I think that what Jesus did is he kind of vibrated out, kind of like the transporter on Star Trek, that his molecular structure changed. And I don't think that Jesus actually went anywhere. He just vibrates at a frequency which we can't detect. So, if we want to see Jesus return, then we need to vibrate at a Jesus frequency. And in order to get there, we have to learn to understand what is the vibration of change. And you have to understand this. I got to say this real quick. Because the vibration of change is different for individuals and it's different for objects. Just like water boils at a certain temperature. Iron melts and vaporizes at a much higher temperature. So it's different. It's like I always say this, your mileage may vary. It's not always going to be the same for everybody. And this is another thing too. My wife tells me that she is so wise. She says that not everybody is where you are. And you're going to have to be patient. So when people are not vibrating at the frequency that you would like them to vibrate at, well, you have to be patient. But what we all have to do, if there is a point of evangelizing, and that is to help people understand vibration so that they understand how to change the key, change the chord. change the lighting, change the mood. Whatever vibrational change has to be undertaken within the human body, within the human mind, within the human spirit, within the human psyche. Whatever that vibration is for you, in order to see visible change, we need to learn that. And there's nothing evil about it. So that's what I have for you today. And I hope that that's encouraging. I hope that that was enlightening. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on my website, www.derrickday.com. Click the link, mark contact, and it'll open up a form for you to fill out. And when you do that, it'll send me an email. And the emails have been coming, and I'm grateful, and I've been responding to them. So I'm thankful for all of you guys that send emails. And so far, the majority of them have been favorable. A few of them have been, hey, Derrick, you're a world-class prick. But, it is what it is. And also, you could also check me out on Instagram or Twitter. My handle is Derrick E. Day. That's DerrickEday. And you could also check out videos on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Derrick Day. And check out the videos, like and subscribe. Because that helps to change the numbers. And basically, you'll be helping me change my frequency. And I appreciate that. And also, be sure to check out the Heretic Happy Hour podcast. Make sure that you like it, subscribe to it, leave us comments. There's a hotline that if you go to the Heretic Happy Hour on iTunes, you'll see what the hotline number is. You can call in and leave a voicemail or leave a text. And if it's something that's really cool, really interesting, we'll use it on the show. So shout outs to Katie Valentine, Keith Giles, and Matthew DiStefano, my co-hosts for the Heretic Happy Hour. I'm grateful for being able to share that stage with you guys. And also be sure to check out the Forward podcast, which is my new reinvented sort of podcast. And we're going to be doing some really cool, really interesting things. I'm working on a good lineup of guests that it's going to help move humanity forward at the speed of thought. I'm really excited about that change. And also check out my blog, Love Minus Religion, on Pathos, and there will be a new blog dropping tomorrow. Okay? So until the next time, I love you. Namaste. I see the light in you. Namaste. I see the God in you. And that's it. Peace and hair grease.